what led MacKenzie Scott to separate from the most affluent man on the globe. With an astounding $38 billion to her name, just imagine this, a young Jeff Bezos forging Amazon's beginnings. Inside a garage with his brilliant wife MacKenzie right there with him. They first connected at their workplace, were wedded in less than 6 months, and then she piloted their car across the country while he meticulously drafted the business plan destined to reshape the world. It was a romance that culminated in the creation of an empire. Now shift your focus to this, their 25-year union was completely dismantled by a few clandestine text messages which were leaked, sold, and plastered across every tabloid publication on earth. That stark and unsettling contrast unveils the true narrative. The very woman who was instrumental in building the empire found herself erased from its story, left in total silence, while the man who became its renowned public figure believed he could successfully conceal his infidelity. A single reckless text message didn't merely expose his affair, it triggered the single most expensive divorce settlement in all of history. MacKenzie Scott didn't simply claim her portion from Jeff Bezos. She took the $38 billion he offered to ensure her silence, and transformed his act of betrayal into the most costly tale of retribution that money has ever financed. And the entire saga began with a secret message he was absolutely confident would remain hidden from everyone. This is more than just a story of a divorce. It is a profound lesson in loyalty, public humiliation, and the incredible power of a woman who flatly refused to become a mere footnote in the chronicle of her own existence. It stands as the most expensive lesson ever taught, and the steep price was paid in betrayal. Long before the infidelity, there was a formidable partnership founded on shared ambition and profound trust. In 1992, Mackenzie Tuttle, an exceptional Princeton alumna who had studied under the guidance of Nobel laureate Toni Morrison, was interviewing for a position at the New York hedge fund, D.E. Shaw. The man conducting her interview was a senior vice president named Jeff Bezos. She landed the position, and her office was situated directly adjacent to his. She found herself captivated by his explosive, booming laughter, and following a whirlwind courtship of only 3 months, they were husband and wife. 1 year later, in 1994, Jeff approached her with an audacious concept, an everything store that would commence by selling books over the internet. This venture required them to abandon their secure, lucrative careers for a highly uncertain future based in Seattle. Yet Mackenzie was completely committed. She was not merely endorsing his vision, she was his co-conspirator. She navigated their vehicle for the 2,500-mile trek from New York City to Seattle, while Jeff occupied the passenger seat, hammering out the details of the business plan. She was quite literally steering the two of them toward their shared destiny. During those initial chaotic days in the garage, Mackenzie was anything but a passive partner. She was a key architect of the enterprise. She was among Amazon's very first employees, intimately involved in nearly every aspect, from brainstorming potential names for the company to meticulously managing its finances and skillfully negotiating its earliest freight agreements. She represented the steady, devoted force that was helping to construct the entire operation from within, the quiet intellectual who was a true partner in the vision. Their vast empire was not built solely on the foundation of his singular genius, but also on her unwavering faith and her absolutely pivotal contributions. That profound loyalty, however, was destined to be repaid with the most public form of degradation imaginable. As in, Amazon rocketed from a humble garage-based startup into a global titan, the very partnership that had brought it into existence started to show deep fractures. Jeff Bezos was no longer simply a technology CEO. He was actively remaking himself into a worldwide icon. He sculpted his physique, graced red carpets, and established himself as a prominent figure in the glamorous realm of Hollywood celebrations and the influential power circles of Washington, D.C. He went on to purchase the Washington Post and founded his own space venture, Blue Origin, which solidified his reputation as an extraordinary public figure who embraced the limelight. In stark contrast, Mackenzie purposefully charted a course in the opposite direction. Beginning around 1996, she withdrew from the day-to-day workings of Amazon, choosing instead to concentrate on raising their 4 children and to finally dedicate herself to her lifelong ambition of becoming a novelist. While Jeff was transforming into a global celebrity, she guarded her privacy with immense dedication, investing an entire decade into meticulously writing her debut novel, The Testing of Luther Albright, a work that would ultimately earn her an esteemed American Book Award. Her world was one of raising children and penning novels, while his became a whirlwind of Hollywood events and red carpet appearances. Their marriage was not merely drifting, it was hurtling at full speed toward a deeply public humiliation. The shared vision they had conceived together during a long cross-country drive was fracturing into 2 profoundly different personal realities. The connection that had once been their most valuable strength was now being stretched to its absolute limit, and when the connection finally fractured, the event wasn't discreet or private, it was auctioned off to the press. The rupture materialized in the person of Lauren Sanchez, a television anchor who frequented the same exclusive social circles as the Bezos couple. An affair ignited, and with it a countdown to disaster began. Subsequently, on January 9, 2019, Jeff and MacKenzie issued a meticulously crafted joint public statement, revealing their intent to divorce following a period of trial separation, while vowing to carry on their interconnected lives as genuine friends. On the surface, it appeared to be a mature, dignified, and peaceful conclusion to a 25-year partnership. Yet, merely a few hours later, the unvarnished truth erupted across the international stage. The National Enquirer unleashed a shocking 11-page exposé featuring intensely private and graphic text messages sent from Jeff to Lauren, one of which alluded to a rather intimate selfie. The article became a source of global mortification, painting a vivid picture of a billionaire's midlife crisis for all to scrutinize. Just imagine a 25-year marriage culminating in the leaking of your husband's most private messages, which were then ridiculed and sold off as though they were worthless tabloid fodder. For MacKenzie, this public shaming was profoundly more painful than the affair itself. The breach was so severe that Bezos initiated his own private investigation, utterly convinced that he was the victim of a political plot, or possibly even a hostile foreign power. His security team proposed speculative theories involving Saudi Arabia hacking into his personal phone. However, as the investigators delved further, they unearthed a betrayal that was far more sordid and deeply personal. The adversary was not some distant foreign government. The adversary was located disturbingly closer to home. While Bezos' private team was on the hunt for international spies, both federal authorities and his own investigators were closing in on a much more ordinary suspect, Michael Sanchez, who was Lauren Sanchez's own brother. The accumulated evidence pointed to Lauren having shared Jeff's intimate messages with her sibling, a Hollywood talent agent with established connections to various political operatives. It is reported that Michael quickly recognized a chance for an enormous financial windfall. He made the initial approach to the National Enquirer, and after a series of negotiations, he allegedly sold his own sister's confidential conversations for the incredible sum of $200,000. Such a payment was extraordinarily large for the tabloid, which indicated just how sensational and impactful they anticipated the story would become. For MacKenzie, the profound humiliation was now compounded by a disturbingly new and sickening truth. Her husband's infidelity wasn't merely a matter of private betrayal. It had been cynically leveraged as a weapon and converted into a tawdry for-profit family enterprise by his lover's own brother, relatives of his new lover. Her most private agony, the disintegration of her 25-year marriage, was suddenly a public spectacle, traded and monetized for cash. The very bedrock of trust she had meticulously built her entire life upon was not just fractured, it had been completely dismantled and sold off. In the wake of this explosive scandal, the world held its breath for the most contentious and costly divorce proceedings in modern history. Jeff and MacKenzie had no prenuptial agreement. Under Washington state law, their combined assets were deemed community property, meaning MacKenzie was legally owed 50% of their fortune, a staggering sum that at the time could have amounted to more than $68 billion. Such a division could have crippled Amazon. A drawn-out fight over control would have sent devastating shockwaves through the stock market and plunged the company she had helped create into absolute chaos. The tabloids were salivating, lawyers were preparing their briefs, and the stage was set for a monumental war over the largest fortune on the planet. But as this turmoil reached its peak, MacKenzie did something that no one, and most certainly not Jeff Bezos, ever anticipated. She declined to fight. She would not permit a sleazy tabloid scandal to define her legacy, and she refused to drag the company she had co-founded through the mire simply to gain public favor. In a truly remarkable act of self-possession and grace, she chose to maintain a dignified silence. She quietly collected her compensation for the betrayal and walked away from the wreckage. She was poised to execute a strategic masterclass that would leave the entire world in stunned silence. On April 4th, 2019, the divorce settlement was revealed, and it landed like a bombshell of quiet brilliance. MacKenzie Scott would be granted 4% of Amazon stock, a holding worth nearly $38 billion at that moment, positioning her as one of the most affluent women on earth. But the true genius was revealed in what she willingly relinquished. In a surgically precise statement on Twitter, she declared she was delighted to be giving him all of her interests in the Washington Post and Blue Origin, plus 75% of their shared Amazon stock and the voting control of her remaining shares to bolster his ongoing contributions with the teams of these phenomenal companies. There was no anger, no accusations, no tell-all interview. With that one sophisticated maneuver, she accomplished three things. She cemented her own independence. She safeguarded the corporation she had helped to build, and she fully extracted herself from the frenzied media circus. She refused to embody the role of the scorned wife. She calmly accepted her betrayal settlement and turned her back on the whole spectacle, leaving Jeff Bezos to contend with the public fallout from his behavior entirely on his own. But this was not a retreat. It was the prologue to a billionaire, dismantling unlike any the world had ever witnessed. Before we disclose how MacKenzie Scott converted this incredible fortune into the ultimate demonstration of calculated revenge, if you are finding this account as compelling as we do, please be sure to press that subscribe button. It allows us to bring you the hidden narratives behind the most prominent headlines. Barely 1 month after the divorce was finalized, while the public was still reeling from the settlement details, MacKenzie initiated her next play. She signed the Giving Pledge, a public commitment made by some of the planet's most affluent individuals to donate the greater part of their vast fortunes. However, her pledge letter was not just a promise. It was a philosophical indictment of the very system that had produced her wealth, and a clear rebuke to her ex-husband, who had pointedly not signed the pledge. Her letter was incisive and potent, stating, "I have a disproportionate sum of money to distribute," she penned. "My philanthropic endeavors will proceed with careful consideration. The process will demand time, dedication, and meticulous care, but I have no intention of waiting, and I will persevere until the vault is completely bare." Until the vault is completely bare. That single powerful statement was a direct challenge to the established norms of billionaire philanthropy, a world that frequently sees vast fortunes warehoused in enormous foundations that only disburse a meager percentage of their assets annually. MacKenzie was signaling a fundamentally different strategy, a philanthropic seismic event. Her plan was not merely to donate her wealth. She intended to execute it with urgency, a clear mission, and a lucid recognition that the fortune itself was the outcome of a massive collective endeavor. The rules of engagement had been rewritten. What came next was nothing short of a philanthropic blitzkrieg. By the start of 2025, MacKenzie Scott had already distributed more than $19 billion to well over 2,000 different organizations. But it is the method of her giving that functions as the silent but incredibly potent rebuke to Bezos's act of betrayal. Whereas the majority of ultra-wealthy benefactors insist on their names being emblazoned on buildings and require endless reports and maintain rigid control over every single dollar, MacKenzie's approach is the complete antithesis. Her team discreetly carries out extensive research to pinpoint highly effective community-driven groups and then provides them with immense unconditional grants entirely free of any stipulations. Her entire philosophy is founded upon a genuinely radical principle, which is trusting other people to be the experts on what is best for their own communities. This is the very same principle her ex-husband so flagrantly disregarded in the public eye. While Jeff was busy polishing his $500 million yacht, MacKenzie was systematically emptying her coffers, delivering billions into the hands of strangers she evidently trusted far more than him. Leaders in the non-profit sector were left utterly astonished, with some becoming the recipients of multi-million-dollar grants that appeared completely unexpectedly. This revolutionary method empowers these organizations to cease their constant preoccupation with fundraising and instead to concentrate on their fundamental missions, whether that involves constructing homes, managing food banks, or championing the cause of social justice. She was taking a fortune stained by a scandal of deep mistrust and methodically converting it into a revolutionary engine fueled by unwavering trust. As MacKenzie set out on this unprecedented philanthropic journey, the stark divergence from her ex-husband's way of life grew too conspicuous to overlook. While she was discreetly liquidating billions from her financial accounts, Jeff Bezos was preoccupied with accumulating the grandest symbols of immense wealth. He ordered the construction of a $500 million super yacht, the Cora, a 417-foot vessel of such staggering size that it necessitated its very own separate 246-foot support yacht to accompany it. The chosen name Cora is a Maori symbol that represents new beginnings and fresh starts. At the same time, MacKenzie was empowering countless grassroots organizations across the country. Jeff was throwing celebrity-filled parties and grappling with the enormous logistical challenge of possibly having to dismantle a historic bridge in Rotterdam, simply to allow his colossal vessel to reach the open sea. While her attention was fixed on rectifying systemic inequalities, his appeared to be centered on indulging in the extravagant larger-than-life status that his immense fortune provided. The visual contrast was absolutely stark. One legacy was being forged in headlines detailing historic record-setting donations to underserved communities. The other was being chronicled in headlines about $500 million playthings and opulent celebrations. MacKenzie was doing far more than just distributing money. She was meticulously crafting an entirely new narrative, one that demonstrates that the most potent answer to a deeply public betrayal is to embrace a purpose truly capable of changing the world. The saga of MacKenzie Scott and Jeff Bezos is in the end a chronicle of two profoundly divergent legacies being built in real time. Model: two vastly different legacies are being forged. On one side you have Jeff Bezos, whose story is etched into skylines with Amazon's towering structures, and into the heavens with Blue Origin's powerful rockets, both testaments to his unyielding drive and top-down authority. Through this, he constructed a global empire becoming the very face of contemporary capitalism. Then in stark contrast, there is MacKenzie Scott, a crucial founding partner who was relegated to the shadows only to be violently dragged into the public eye as the scorned woman at the center of a sleazy media spectacle. However, she refused to be defined by that public betrayal. Instead, she transformed it into her greatest asset. She accepted the divorce settlement, the monetary embodiment of his infidelity, and methodically began converting it into a groundbreaking engine for positive change. Her lasting mark won't be found in concrete and chrome, but in the profound, quiet influence of innumerable grants dedicated to dismantling the exact power imbalances that figures like her ex-husband so often construct. Those leaked messages did far more than simply dissolve their union. They effectively set loose a philanthropic powerhouse poised to teach the costliest lesson about fidelity that wealth has ever purchased. While Bezos was erecting skyscrapers and launching spacecraft, MacKenzie was building a new kind of legacy, one that demonstrates how infidelity might cost a fortune, but integrity possesses the power to reshape the world. So we want to know what you think. Has MacKenzie Scott delivered the ultimate multi-billion-dollar schooling on the price of loyalty to Jeff Bezos and the entire billionaire class? Or was this never about payback, but rather a journey toward her own personal vindication? Share your perspective with us in the comments section. And while you're down there, make sure you look into our upcoming investigation. We're exploring why Jeff Bezos' famous smile seems to have vanished ever since he tied the knot with Lauren Sanchez. Remember to hit like, subscribe, and click that notification icon so you're the first to know when our next story drops.